After you leave, after you leave your.
Yomi and Co are very good.
Did you?
No, I went on to it, but I rented my flat.
The house I sold to them was sold.
How much?
I reckon it's I'm not convinced.
No one else would buy it.
Let's go.
It turns up. Good evening, Ian. How are you doing?
Well, Hashem, how are you?
Oh, Hashem.
Okay. Sorry, I wasn't at the Lyceum.
Sorry?
I'm sorry, I wasn't at the Lyceum. We were isolating for 10 days.
Are you isolated? Why are you isolated?
My youngest tested positive.
Oh.
That's why I couldn't
How's he
come.
feeling?
Yeah, bro, Hashem, it's fine.
Right. Today we're going to be finishing a perk. If you come here, you'll get a lechaim, courtesy of Tolly, and a macaroon to get into the spirit of Beis.
You look after they're yours.
I don't want to be king of the
When there's less people learning in the world, so to speak, those who learn get greater schar. No, but not just in the Shiur. Around the whole world, people are very, very, very busy. They're told with all the different things that need to be done. So it's like we're keeping the ball going. I remember some use this as a moshel, but it's a true story at the same time. There's a yeshiva in Yisroel called Brisk, Avon Mishra's Brisk. It's meant to be a great schus to go there. I never went there. So that's why I'm not the next yeshiva punished, because I never went to. I'm sure Ben went. Yes, obviously. Otherwise we don't let you in the Shiur. We're very backwards by these kinds of things. Everybody there waits for years to get a chance to come into the Shiur. Then 1 week was like on these end of Zman, like Friday afternoon. Well, Shiva walked in with Mishra and he saw like 4 boys sitting in this mansion anymore. And he went up to them, he asked them the names. None of them were in his Shiur. You have to wait a few years. He was so impressed with the dedication. So he said, "You boys don't need to wait. From tomorrow, you're in my Shiur." It was a huge, you can imagine next week, Friday afternoon, how Beis bad day social is packed the Maisa. And the same thing is like the Baruch, so to speak, that when everybody else has not the ability and you push yourself, the Baruch is more impressed, and that shows extra dedication. So to come to learn a daf, you've all been hoovering all day, cleaning cupboards.
Tolly, come. Keep us away.
We're up to Daf Daled Amud Aleph, about 10 lines from the top where the Gemara starts, and we've got to finish the perk, so we've got to get going. Says the Gemara. Very, very briefly, the Mishnah says that we don't take a mashka from a cotton. Says the Gemara, Afi Shabu Alitziboya. Ain't Tovin. You're not Tivea. It says, Im Shoklu, if they give, Mikavim Yodim, we give them. It's mashba that if you ask, they don't get. They're only. We don't even ask them. The Gemara, it's a very simple, and the answer is also a very simple question. There's steer between the two Mishnahs. One Mishnah is Meduyuk, is the juice, that we don't ask children. And another Mishnah is we ask, but we don't take a mashka. What's the answer? When they're less than Bar Mitzvah, we don't even ask. When they're Bar Mitzvah, we ask, but we don't demand, we don't force. It says, the Mishnah tells us that a goy and a kuti, 2 main halachas which got. 1, we don't take from them a machzah shekel. It's halacha number 1. Halacha number 2, we don't take from them korbani zivei, zavin, the zavos, and yoldus. Very, very briefly, if a person sees zav or a woman sees zav or she has a baby, in order to be able to come into Beis Hamikdash after a certain korban, which is the beginning of Parashas Tazviah, a kuti and a from them. Have a very famous machlokes, are kutim Jewish or not? What happened was towards the end of the first Beis Hamikdash, came along Sancheiriv, and what did Sancheiriv do? One of the major things Sancheiriv did, Rashi says it in Parashas Balak, he moved every nation out of its country, moved it to another nation. That is why if an Egyptian girl comes to you and says to you, "I want to convert," an Egyptian boy, if Chesed Mubarak would say to you, "I want to become a Yid," he can become a Yid. He's dead. Okay, so we took over from him. Who's now? Okay, whatever it is. Mostly says he wants to become Jewish, but accept him, we're even allowed to marry a Yiddish girl. Why? Oh, what about Mitzi? You're not allowed to marry Mitzi. The Torah says because he moved all the nations. He moved a group of people in Teretz Yisrael. And these people didn't keep the mitzvahs, and lions came and killed them. Because even though they weren't Jewish, the fact that you're living in Eretz Yisrael, not keeping mitzvahs, was something which was abhorrent. That's a good word, posh word, abhorrent in the eyes of Hashem. So they got scared and they all did gerus. And the question is, was it a genuine gerus or not? Oh, that is the machlekes, gerus. Is it only gerus because of the lions, or was it real gerus? From this Mishnah, if I was to ask you, would you consider a kuti a good yid, a solid, not good yid, it's the wrong word, a genuine yid or not a genuine yid?
No, it's put together with
Very good. And not only is put together with a nochi, add even more. The Mishnah says he doesn't bring a machzah shekel, he doesn't bring zavnu zovis. He's a raya from this Mishnah like who? That a kuti is not a yid. Very good. That's what the Gemara says. What did you say, so Moshe? Can't remember. Doesn't matter. Okay. Anochi v'akuti chulu. Omar Rabbi bo. Tipotet, our Mishnah fits in, it's explained, Commandama kuti kenochi. And the kuti is like a good, like you and Dank yourselves. This palgim, there's machlek, is kuti kenochi divrei Rabbi. Shugam le'nomer, kuti k'yisol l'chol dover. So our Mishnah is like Rabbi, like Shugam le'nomer, which one? Rabbi. Our Mishnah is like Rabbi, that kuti is a goy. Yes, is that clear? Agree? Comes along, Omar Beloz, I said to you many times that in Shami, like V'mar instead of V'omar, and a lozo instead of a lozo, the aleph gets missed out a very, very lot. So this is Omar Rabbi Lozo, the Amoy Rabbi Lozo, who actually was a time, it was a contemporary of Rabbi Yochanan. Normally it's called Rabbi Lozo, here it's called the Lozo. Mas this in Benochim, what he does is he splits it, and he says like this: Nochri doesn't give machzah shekel, but kuti can. Now, I was very happy to know this Pilshin Nisham is mamish murder because it's the easiest one to understand, I find. But at this stage of the Gemara is not sure. Does it mean that the Gemara you should miss that word kuti completely? Or you should have it, but put it only towards the second part? But the Maisa, he wants to say that our Mishnah is also according to who? Very good. Who holds that kuti is a proper Yisroel. Our Mishnah says that kuti can't give a machzah shekel. He changes the gills and he edits the Mishnah to fit in like a Shum. The Nochim or Bekutim loy, Bekutim they can. But Tonichen, I'll prove it to you, says Abalosa. What's the proof? Adam, the Rabbi says I gave him. Mikem lo samumim. The pasuk says Adam kiyakim mikem kol Hashem. Adam includes gave him. Mikem excludes a mumma. A mumma is somebody who's a meshumah, the apostate. So therefore, our Mishnah, and he understands that he doesn't prove, but he understands that kuti is a proper game. So from the pasuk, it is clear that a kuti is allowed to bring a korban. So therefore, he says our Mishnah is like Rabbi Shugam Lil, and a kuti is allowed to bring a machzah shekel. Says Mishnah argues on Rabbalos. Why? Because let's examine the second half of the Mishnah. The second half of the Mishnah says we don't accept korbanos from them, right? Zavin zavis. Who are we talking about? Says the Gemara. I said it's outside. Are we talking about a goy? Of course not. Why can't we talk about a goy? Because a goy doesn't have tumah. Since a goy doesn't have tumah, in fact, if a goy sees zov, and on that day he becomes a yid, what level of tumah does he have? He's toy. Why? Because there's no such thing as zovis to a goy. So our Mishnah which says don't accept kabbalah zova from a, is not talking about a goy. Who is it talking about? It must be talking about kuti. So therefore, it's not like Rabbi Lozo who says let's miss out the word kuti. It's evidently clear that the Mishnah is talking about kuti. Says the Gemara. That's the Piligab Lezer. Imi kam yodem kinei zavim zovis. Kol yodis. V'cheish kinei zavim zovis b'nochim. So the Gemara says, elevation b'nochim v'sefer b'kutim. You're going to say the Veish is talking about only good v'sefer b'kutim. The Gemara says Cain, who indeed Veish b'nochim v'sefer b'kutim. And this is the end of this discussion. So let's summarize what we've learned. We have a machlekes Rebbe Shimon Gamliel. What's the status of a kuti? Rebbe holds kuti is a goy. Shimon Gamliel says kuti is a yid. Amish says two halachas about a kuti. One, don't take a machzah shekel. Two, don't bring a korban. The Gemara says the riot that our Mishnah is like a Rabbi, that kuti is a goy. Says Abbalos, you've got no proof. He edits the Mishnah. Says the Gemara that he holds that kuti coming a machzah shekel. Says the Gemara, but the seif of the Mishnah is obviously talking about kuti. The Gemara says, yes, we are happy to accept that the Reishas talk about a goy, the seif is about a kuti. Mufal should ask, because this game included, if the seif is talking about a kuti, and we're going like a Beloz, that our Mishnah is going to be B'shittas of Shum Gamliel, that a kuti is what? Is a good need, a genuine need. So why do we not accept kinei zov nezovis from a kuti? That means we explain. The Reisha says that kuti is allowed to bring a machzah shekel. Just read the word nochi. The Sefer has to be talking about Kuti because it says it can't be talking about a goy. Why can't it be a goy? Because the goy anyway will bring a korban for Tumah because he's not Tomei. So the Sefer must be talking about Kuti.
Can you say one's according to one, one's according to the other?
No, the word doesn't say that. So if it comes out, the word doesn't suggest, the word comes out that the Sefer, everybody agrees, is that Kuti is not allowed to bring. The cash is, maybe it's on that shelf. It is there on the top right-hand shelf. I saw it before. Oh. Answers the Chakis and others that Kinei Zovin is quite complicated. Many times discussed it. You see once you're tummy for 1 day. You see twice tummy for 7 days. 3 times 7 days plus the korban. Kutim wouldn't get the korbanos right. We don't want to bring a korban from a kuti because he's probably got the days wrong, and we don't want to bring chulin azor. Even according to Shimon, that's what I want to say. Even according to Shimon Gamliel, that's an important point. And therefore, everybody agrees that our Mishnah, even according to Shimon Gamliel, it doesn't work. That's Pshat in our Mishnah. Now we've got a new topic. I remember when I was a child, Shiur Torah was getting built. Unfortunately, it was a huge fire. Any of you remember the fire? You remember it?
One of the roses, no? Shimon Rose's brother.
And what happened was they rebuilt it, and the corner, you all know, the corner of Water Park and Upper Park, some other built a beautiful house, which now has turned into flats.
He's still
He's still there?
Next to it, it's Sol's garden, basically.
He sold his garden. Okay. And he gave a huge donation to Shiur Torah. He bought toilet paper. I heard he bought toilet paper, years worth of toilet paper. And if you think about how big the yeshiva is now, okay. And this is the discussion now. Do we accept a donation? Very good. Do we accept a donation from a goy?
I got a few from going to Shiur Torah.
What?
It's all my status to give me money. But
So, do we accept money for?
Yeah, but I read that they had the same thing down West Ham Safe Torah.
they want to see.
Some going wants to
Some
donate.
guy to Shkichos, so when people like in the factories, they gotta give a massive donation. That's used for non-safe Torah things.
Says the Gemara. Let's see the Gemara. Omer Rabbi Yochanan. We passed like Rabbi Yochanan. B'tchila, when we're starting the building of a Beis Hamikdash, ein mekalim mahem lo davar mesuyim v'davar she'einu mesuyim. U'besoif mekalim davar she'einu mesuyim v'mekalim mahem davar mesuyim. Rabbi Yochanan makes 2 differentiations. Differentiation number 1: is it the beginning of the building or is it after it's concluded? That means the beginning of the Beis Hamikdash were more machmir. The Mefarshim explain, why can anybody suggest why are we more machmir? Yes, I would have thought that, but they say even a better explanation. What's wrong with a goy donating at the beginning?
He can say what he wants to.
No, okay. So Russian first off. No, because if he's at the beginning of the project, he might spoil the project and he might ruin it. Once the projects get going, and it's like if you decide you want to let's open up a new shul, you get a few people together. What happens is one of the people joins, and he's right there at the beginning, and then he doesn't want the shul, and then the whole shul falls apart. If you already got the shul good, then you can accept anybody. But you want at the beginning people on the same page as you.
People put the name up, and they don't want to know anymore about the yeshiva. They got the name on the building, and then they go.
So that's the beginning. So one differentiation is beginning and the end. Another thing is davar mesuyim, davar she'mesuyim. Davar mesuyim means something recognizable, something set aside, something which is distinguishable. I wonder what the article could translate mesuyim. Can anybody go to the Shazar? Davar mesuyim. What? Distinctive. So Rabbi Yochanan holds like this: if it's at the beginning, it's forbidden anything. If it's at the end, only if it's distinctive. Do you remember this? You should write it down. Sorry, you remember this? According to Rabbi Yochanan, and this is how we pass it. At the beginning of the Beis Hamikdash, we don't take anything from a goy. Not distinctive and not distinctive. What's the opposite of distinctive? Vague. Indistinctive. Once the Beis Hamikdash is finished, then we don't take for something distinctive, but indistinctive we do. Why not take something distinctive? Because then it reminds us of the goy all the time. That's Rabbi Yochanan's shita. Is even more machmir. What does he say? We never take anything from a goy for the Beis Hamikdash. Says Rabbi Yochanan. Our Mishnah argues Rabbi Yochanan that you're not allowed to take something from Bedek Beis, which is mashmir. You're not allowed to take anything at all. He explains that you don't take, we're talking about a distinctive item. That's what the Mishnah says, we don't take something from them. Now, Chaknes says he meant to miss out the next line, but I have seen that Kabbalah and others do read it. Or he says, Posar lo, betchilo, We're talking about at the beginning, and therefore you have to throw it in the Dead Sea. Okay. These two dots, by the way, is a mistake. What do you say? Oh. Masnisim pligav shim gamleir shim lokish. The Tani Akol Shavit. Money, metal sinks in the Dead Sea. Metal will sink. Even a person can sink. There's a Mishnah in Eivachin that says that a goy can make a neder and can be nidder. That means you can make a neder regarding him. So therefore, he's a raya that a goy can give. I'm sure Noach says he can't. We're talking about a korban oilo. A korban oilo gets burnt on the mizbeach, and therefore nothing is left to remind us of the goy's donation. So that's mutter. It says, well, nichen noidin makes a neder. Oilo, that makes sense. It's a oilo. Nidin oilo. Can you do such thing as a nidin oilo? Nidin means to be evaluated. Elo kishoma yisol oilo. A yid said, I want to give an oilo. Nidin can also mean to do something which somebody else aroused within you to create the neder. So neder is, he said, I promise to give a korban, give it as a neder. Nidder is when he sees a yid give an oil, he says, I want to give what he's giving. In both circumstances, we don't mind the guy giving it because nothing distinctive is going to be remaining in the Beis Mikdash. Now, the halach is whenever you bring an oil, you have to be with it in the sochim. The sochim, which would pay a certain amount of money to buy wine and flour, which would go on the mizbeach. Often, the cost of the wine would go down and there would be spare money. The Sanhedrin would use the money to buy cups to sprinkle blood with. If a goy brings a korban oilo, he has to pay for the nesachim. If he pays for the nesachim, he might have money left over. If there's money left over, they might buy a cup, which is a kasha according to Bichlan and Mishim Lokish, the all Mephoshim explain, because a cup is a distinctive item, and you'll always be able to point and say that cup came from my money.
You leave that cup just.
No, you keep it for the Beis Mikdash.
No, I'm saying if it's used, the Beis Mikdash uses just.
Well, that's nice. So what do you say?
Beis Mikdash just use that cup just for going now.
Why? We don't want to go to the Beis Mikdash. What? At all. I agree with you that the cheshash, the first 3 times I've read it, seems a big bit distant. But the fact is, it's a reality. It could happen that I go big oil and it'll bring money for the nesachim, and the nesachim will go down, and we'll end up using the money to buy a cup. And now that cup will belong to the goy.
If the goy would give enough nesachim that one cup would be his, then yes, you'd see.
Right, so that's we shouldn't allow it.
What's the how much of that cup was thingy?
It might happen. Could it happen? Yes, this is a problem. Says the Gemara. Maybe even the Nesachim. Does he not have to be in the Nesachim? But most of the Nesachim, loyally Klishois, and most of the Nesachim is Klishois. Then it's a maybe double Mitzvim. Hey, so basically, we know that Tanina and the Vachin Boichin that they're allowed to give Eivachin. Eivachin is they say the value of a person's on me. Loyally, the case of rising on. Ich badat Omar. What are you going to be forced to say? Tam on there. The Shemaim will miskavnu meleinen boine belekabayis. Kenatam afhocha. Also say over here. The Shemaim will miskav on top of Dalad on the base. Umaleinen boine belekabayis. I mean like this, which maybe you were trying to say. I'm not sure. When a person donates money with distinct decision to buy something for the Beis Mikdash that we don't want, because then what happens is he is now feeling that part of Beis Mikdash is his. But when he gives money for A, and then what happens is there's leftover money or other money which we take from him, and we decide what to do with it, and we buy with it to Bedek Abayis, that's not a problem, because that's not that he is directly donated. It could be that would be a good market for the charity campaign, because they have no connection between what happens when they give the money to what happens to the money. It's not like they say that bookshelf in the Beis Medrash is from them. Oh, so that's a different thing, but that's not what the charity campaign.
No, on the charity campaign.
So why
it just gets mixed up.
What?
Why charity would say that? Why
Buy food with it. Yeah, they could buy food with it.
Food or anything?
Yes. Okay, I'm just saying, could be perhaps not to be even more back, but not to take something which would be beneficial. Okay. Says the Gemara, how would Shimon Lakish? Where does Shimon Lakish get the idea that you don't want to take anything from a goy? You learned it from Lo Lochem V'Lo Live This Place Lekenu. It's not for us and for you to join together to build the base of Hashem. We don't want to. Now, in that pasuk, it finishes off that also Yerushalayim, the walls of Yerushalayim. And from here, we learn that not only the base of Mikdash, but even for the walls of Yerushalayim or the water springs and things like that, a goy is not allowed to donate. From here, we learn, he asks us, from here, we learn, even for the water mains For the walls or the towers. You've got no portion. And the Pasuk says, Ein lechem tzedakah v'zikaron b'Yerushalayim. No in Yerushalayim should the guy feel that it's his part. Okay. The next 4 lines is deleted by almost all the Mefarsh. Chaknesky deletes it and others. It's not adding anything anyway. Wherever you can learn from it, you can learn from the next one. The Mishnah says that that according to Rameya, you have to give. Let's go back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah says like this: if you give a shekel with you and your friend together, you give 1 carbon. Semer says 2 kulbonos. So let's say like this: if I give a machzah shekel, then I give 1 carbon. Oh, let's get it clear. This is how Chalkes explains it. The others who argue, but I find it's the easiest pshat. He writes himself. There's other maforshim, but this is a very simple, nice pshat. He says like this: according to the Kama, the reason we give a carbon is that whenever you give a donation to the Beis Hamikdash, you always did it that it should weigh slightly more. It's actually a Rashi in Parshas Kisisa. Let's say, for example, you promised to give a kilo worth of flour to Beis Hamikdash. What you used to do is you take a kilo weight and put flour on the other side of the scales. You always had to make it tip a little bit. You could never give it to Beis Hamikdash what's called shava b'shava, ayin b'ayin, Rashi says. You don't give it exact, right? You always had to weigh. So if I give a machzah shekel, I'll give a tiny bit, which weighs slightly more than the machzah shekel, which is designated. If me and you together give a shekel, the Beis Hamikdash has lost out. Why? Because now there's no 2 hechos. If I give a machzah shekel, you give a machzah shekel. So therefore, the Chachamim say because of that, if we bring together a shekel Beis Hamikdash, we have to give a carbon. The Meir says no, we have to bring 2 carbonos. Why? Because the Meir holds the chiyuv of carbon is not when you share with somebody; it's every single time. So that's the machlokes of Meir and the Chachamim. What the Gemara is going to examine is the Mishnah talks about another case. Well, let's say Moshe, you're the gabber, you're the what's the financial person in charge of a shiur? What do you call it? Treasurer. You're the treasurer. I'll say they would have to use it. The gizbor many times the treasurer. So I come to you. I want to give the machzah shekel Beis Hamikdash. You say, fine, give it to me. I say, I don't have a machzah shekel. I'll give you a whole shekel. You'll give me a machzah shekel back. The Mishnah says, how many karbonos do I have to give in such a case? 2. The question is, does that fit in with the Rameya or does it fit in with the Tanna Kama? I'm going to briefly summarize what we just said to get it clear. According to Tanna Kama, if you give 1 carbon, one machzah shekel, you don't need to give a carbon. But if you share with somebody else, you do have to give a carbon. The reason being because we always want you to overtip the scales a little bit, and now they give it together, you're not going to stay if you have to give a carbon. You share a carbon from the 2 of you. Meir says you always give a carbon, and therefore if there's 2 together, you bring 2 carbonos. Now, what happens in the case where I give a whole shekel and I get it back a machzah shekel? The Mishnah says you have to give 2 carbonos. Does that fit in the Tanna Kama or does that fit in the Rameya? That's what the world's going to discuss. Let's start from after brackets. Let's listen to Rameya. He holds that just like the machzah shekel is b'dater, also the carbon is b'dater. So Rameya, this is shekel shalom, shuchav the carbon. Every time you give a shekel, you have to give a carbon. Where the man in it's from? This is what you have to give. Since Hashem gave a gold coin of fire to Moshe Rabbeinu, and we're always a bit nervous that maybe it's not the right amount, so you always have to give a carbon, not just when you share, but you always have to give a carbon. And the Mishnah then carries on. Nos and sell a little shekel, chayav shnei kolbonos. On Mavlez it's a meir. Why? Because according to Rameya, it makes a lot of sense. Why? Because according to Rameya, there are 2 reasons to give a carbon. Let's work it very clear. I come to Beis Hamikdash and I give a shekel, I get back a machzah shekel. One problem is that according to Rameya, whenever you give a machzah shekel, you also have to give a carbon. You have to give 1 carbon. Second of all, there's a possibility that the coins were not exact and accurate, so therefore I have to give a 2nd carbon for that purpose. But according to the Chachamim, there's no reason to give a carbon when you give a machzah shekel. The only reason is because of the hecha. So then you don't have to give 1 carbon. So the continuation of our Mishnah, the Tanya, it brings a proof. You have to give 2, and for the Beis it says that Rameya says you give 2. When is he talking about? It's talking about the situation when you give a shekel, you give back a machzah shekel. Umar Vav. That's Umar. What's the word Umar mean? Had it before. Omar, he said, but Omar Vav. Divya Koili, it's everybody holds that, meaning that everybody agrees you have to give two. Meaning like this, that according to the mayor, you actually have to give three, according to the Kabbalah two. And the Gemara explains it even more. There are three you have to give. Also, Yomi, Yisroel, Yisroel, V'Shem Rav, Sheish Kavod Sinon, Echad Shekel Shodoison, Echad Shekel Shodoitel, Echad Etvater. According to Rav, according to the mayor, when you give the treasure of the Beis Hamikdash a shekel, and you get back a machzah shekel, you have to give three korbanos. So everybody wants to say why you have to give three korbanos when you give a shekel to the treasure, you get back half a shekel. Anyone want to suggest why?
Because you're giving a whole shekel. So two.
And for Dibber too.
Let's go back to one. The first one is because the Torah always demands a cowboy. He holds just like the shekel that Torah, cows that. So that's one you always give. The second one and the third come for both the same reason. Because since you're giving and you're taking, and as we said, the coins of the older days were not always exact. It is possible that they changed the Beis Hamikdash gave you was slightly more than the machzah shekel, and the machzah shekel you gave, and the shekel you gave them was slightly less. So therefore, you have to give. I was thinking of a good example is that if you
for that reason,
no, the Torah one is for the Torah. He learns that the Torah demands that you always have to give, not to do with the weight. That's just like if you go to a money changer, let's say for example, and then you give him shekel and he asks for dollars. So first he'll go out to the exact rate, and then he takes a little bit, and then if you then swap it back, he'll then take it again. Because each time he has to take his tiny bit to make sure that there's no loss. They make sure this make sure to make sure he also has to make money. It's not exactly the same. Okay. Says the Gemara. Oh, I want to explain this time bit outside, and the rest is very straightforward. We're talking about a family, a state, a father. He has many sons, and they have many animals. Every year they're born. You have to give Ma'aser Behema. Ma'aser Behema is a special color. What's the color of Ma'aser Behema? That if you got a shutfus, there's no din Ma'aser Behema. So let's say I open up a farm with someone else, right? And we owe with that year 100 newborn sheep are born, new lambs. We don't have to give any Ma'aser Behema. That's the halacha. Now, when the father gives for a number of sons, all in one family, we don't see it as two people giving it together. We see it as one person giving for the family. So he doesn't need to give a carbon. Because he's not paying for two people. It's like he's paying for 10 people. So he gives 5 shekel, which is 10.5 shekels, and then he's okay. And then, are they chayav Ma'aser Behema? Yes. Why? Because we look at it as one business. If it's one business, it's not a shutfus. It belongs to one person. So they are part of a carbon, but they're chayav Ma'aser Behema. If they decide to split, and then they decide to rejoin together, for example, the father died, Yaakov died, they left behind loads of sons. They all split, they each take their share. And then they decide to rejoin. So then we say, wait a second, now you're shutfin. Since you're shutfin, therefore, you're part of a Ma'aser Behema. But you're chayav Ma'aser Shekel. Why chayav Ma'aser Shekel? Because you're separate people. Now the Gemara asks the following shaila, more later, but it's going to say it like this. When the father died, let's say he left behind young goats and old goats. Now, there are two ways to split the inheritance. Let's say he left 10 children, 10 old goats, 10 young goats. So each one can take one old, one young, and everybody gets the exact portion. It's marvelous. Now, many times it doesn't work so well, because let's say one person prefers to have older goats, or obviously younger goats, because it's not easy to deal with two different kinds of animals. So what they'll do is they'll say, you take two older goats, I'll take 2 younger goats, we'll split it that way around. Now, what happens if they split it exactly what we would call fair? Every one of us gets 1 young goat. And then we rejoin together. One could argue that that is no longer considered a shutfus, but what we have reawakened the original business. Because we never actually split. All we did was, let's say the father died. He left behind 10 sons, 10 young goats. Everybody took 1 young goat. And then he decided, you know what, let's join back together again. So now it was as if it never split, because nobody actually took. When they split, one took an older goat, one took a younger goat. So then you can say, right, it was a business, it was a sale. You took that, you took that. Now we're banging them together again. So it's a new business. It's a new shutfus.
A share is different size.
That's the share, and therefore, since it's a new purchase, it's a shutfus. So that's all it was discussing. And basically, and then you're going to have cases where it's actually possible to be chayav in both and potter in both. Right? You can work it out. And sometimes, for example, let's say regarding the money, they never split up. But regarding the animals, they did split up. So regarding the animals, they're potter for mice because it's a shutfus, it's a split up. Regarding the money, no. Okay, let's see the more inside. Brothers who are partners that are chayav in carbon p'turim mice beim. When is that case? When's that story? Where they split up, and then they joined up together. So since they split up and joined up together, it's the pot for mice behemoth. Why the pot for mice behemoth? Because it's not one family, but it's a number of families joining together. It's a shutfus. They decided to open up a farm together. But the pot for mice behemoth, the chayav and carbon, because it's individuals. The chayavim mice behemoth p'turim carbon. Where the father died, but they didn't split up, and therefore the pot from carbon, because it's still the father's one estate. But the chayav mice behemoth, because at the end of the day, is no longer a partnership. It's not a partnership, it's one business. Omar beloza, again, the aleph is missed out. It's only when the goat was against Gedim is a young goat, Tiyashim is an older goat. So if they split young goats, the old goats, the young goats, then we say that when they join up together, so now it's a shutfus. That was his portion from the beginning. So therefore, what happened was the father was alive. He had 10 sons, 10 goats. We look at it as one entity, and then the father died, and they split up for a couple of days, but then they got back together. That is the original arrangement, and therefore, what's the din? They are potter for they would be chayav in ma'aseh. Sorry, they'd be chayav in ma'aseh because now they're coming back together. They're not shutfid. They're chayav in ma'aseh, but they're potter from kam. No, he disagrees. I feel like the Beis and potter from ma'aseh. Kahida tanina on tamon. If you buy or if you buy as a gift, potter ma'aseh, potter ma'aseh. So the Rabbi and Obelos argue with passing like a Bechno. Rashi in Bechayvus brings this Gemara, and Rashi explains that the Machlokes of Bechno and Shlokish is based on the famous Machlokes of Yesh Brera or Ein Brera. Many of us will quote this Rashi over here. Retroactive designation, meaning like this: when a man dies and he leaves behind older goats and younger goats, it is obvious that when he dies, each child owns a 50%. Let's say he's got 2 sons. Keep it simple. 2 sons, 1 old goat, 1 young goat. That's all he left behind. 2 sons, 1 old. So now, minater, what happens is, as he dies, 50% of each goat belongs to each child. Then I say, one person says to the other, you take the older goat, you take the younger goat. That was a sale. Because at the end of the day, I had 50% of the younger goat, you had 50% of the older goat, and we agreed to sell, we're bartering, it's a sale. But let's say he has 2 young goats, and each one takes 1. And then we decide to rebuy. If you hold Yesh Brera, then what happens is, we say that there was never a split, but rather when the father was alive and when the father died, and afterwards, it was always clearly that was my portion, that was your portion, and there was never a sale. If you hold Ein Brera, then there was a sale. Why? Because when I agree to take 1 goat and you agree to take the other goat, then what happens is each part of the goat becomes part of the other, is sold to the other person. Yes.
That means that always, we knew that each one had a goat. So
that's it.
So then it shouldn't be one. It should be separate entity. Then they should be 2 Calvins.
No, because if you're Yesh Brera,
so each one had their own. It's not a family entity anymore.
Yeah, but it was theirs even before the father died.
Right, but it was theirs individually.
No,
why not?
Because
we're saying that's his and that's his.
Yes, I know. I hear you say, but no, because what we say is like this: that the Torah said that if you're working together, so it's not like you bought and sold from each other, but rather this is how their estate is looked at, and therefore it's considered to be this is your portion in their estate. Okay. That is the Shiloh Yesh Brera Novera. It says more. Rabbi Omar Yomi asked, "Well, why don't we say that sometimes they're obligated in both? Top of the hill with that. Hey Chavidi, when is that possible? Most other brackets. If they divided the money but not the animals, and the Chayam Mizel was that, the Chayav in both. Why the Chayav in both? Because when it comes to the cowboy, we say the two businesses, the Chayav and cowboy. Comes to the animals, we say they're not a split, it's all one farm, and therefore the Chayav in both. If they divided the animals and not the Nechosim, so it's actually possible to be both. And in fact, the Gemara B'chayva says that indeed there are cases where they're chayav in both, potter in both, but generally speaking, if they divide one, if they usually divide it all, and if generally speaking one is dependent on the other. Omar mimono, can't go Omar mimono. Hoda that Omar b'shrei hoisa behem avoiv. The animal is not the majority. And hoisa behem avoiv ain't nik nechosim. Now what happens is that if the animals is the majority of what a person owns, and a person splits the animals, we consider them to be completely split, and you can't say, oh, they only split the animals, haven't split the money, and therefore they should be part from the carbon. No, that defines them. Just because they're one business, therefore the pot from the carbon, at the end of the day, it's two separate people. It's not different. And therefore, just like if a person gives a selah shlema for a family, he is potter, and therefore the same thing should be, and therefore the potter. The Gemara asks a question. This is how the Gon is Megia. So the Gemara asks that if that's the case, they should be potter from a cowboy, even if they join up together. So the Gemara says no, it's not true, because when because when they join up together, then they decide that they are going to now be one. Therefore, they're no longer one business, and therefore, if they split and then rejoin together, they are chayav in ma'aseh behema. Sorry, they are chayav in the carbon in the pot of ma'aseh behema. That means the Gemara says like this. Your question is, what's the logic behind it should be pot from the carbon? Says they because this is one person. Says, well, if that's the case, then even if they rejoin together at a later stage, we should say the same thing. So the Gemara says no. When they join together at a later stage, we look at it as a partnership, and once it's a partnership, the pot of ma'aseh behema and the chayav in carbon. It says, well, that what? We've had this actually. Yes. So he says like this, that not just if two brothers, but even two brothers-in-law. Let's say a man dies, he has no sons. Where does the property goes to the daughters? Let's say a man has two daughters, and two daughters are married. And now the two sons-in-law, let's say, decide not to split the property, but to keep the business going as it is. Then it's like two brothers. And the halacha is that they are potter from the cowboy and the chayav in ma'aseh behema, because it is considered. It is not just by two sons taking over, but by two sons-in-law. It's the same thing. What did they do with the cowboy? They would use it for the same thing that they used the machzah shekel. They gave it as an adova. They used to use it for ulas kaitz and mizbeach whenever they would need to donate more in the Beis Hamikdash. They would paint the Kodesh HaKadoshim in gold with the money of the carbon. And the bankers would take it as their commission. And some say they would use it to pay the people that would take the machzah shekel to Yerushalayim. So there's many different shittahs. And the Rambam in fact paskins that what they used to do with it was Vikua Azov. They would paint gold, and he says once they finish painting with gold, then they use the leftovers from the dover for extra components. I just want to say one short point. The famous story is in the Sefer Shimusha Shel Torah. That the Vilna Gaon's wife used to go collecting from the poor, and she's dedicated friend. They used to do it for many, many, many years. And then what happened was they made a contract with each other. What was the contract? That whoever dies should come back. And Nisa, the Vilna Gaon's wife, was lifted first. And she came back and she said, unfortunately, I cannot tell you anything that happens in Shemaim because you will never understand. But there was one occasion when we went past the house and I lifted up my finger and I said that this house we haven't yet knocked on, and for my effort of lifting up the finger for one short moment, you will never be able to appreciate the reward which is greater for me just for that effort. What happens is when we work very hard for Pesach, sometimes a person can forget how much reward he's getting. You go to the shop, you're standing in the queue to get your more. You go to the shop and you come back and you have says it's the wrong container, you need to get a different size. And you go and you buy a bottle of wine, you drop it and smash it. It goes all these things. We cannot possibly imagine the tremendous amount of schar we'll get. And what happens is, because we do so much, so what happens is you get very used to the big things. So you hear about so and so that they kasher with your fire, and this person does better this way. And sometimes you can miss the appreciation of every act. There's so much reward that we'll be getting. Mamish, it's just unbelievable to think how Kali Sol is so special. Every effort you clean your car, we'll try our best, and we know that we can't get it all perfect. And it's very important that I saw somebody had a slogan on, don't make your poem so much joy that there's no spirituality. Don't make your Pesach so much spirituality that there's no joy. And it's also a very nice line. I thought it's a very important point. You have to remember there's a huge amount of joy. The Ika Avoida is that we should feel a tremendous amount of joy that we have the privilege of serving Hashem. We can't imagine how much effort. The Bidman writes about it. He writes about somebody that went to the other end of the town to get some more for his wife. He came back and his wife said it was the wrong kind, wrong thing, and he had to go all the way back. He says, the person thinks to himself, like, he says, imagine Eliyahu Novi would have come to you and said to you, please will you do me a favor? Will you go to the shop for me? You won't have a shaila about such a thing. If Chavdieski would do it, would also I do without any questions. And we have to imagine, this is what Torah was asking us, is we can't imagine, you lift a finger, how much reward you get. If you hoover, it's a lot more effort than lifting a finger. Yes. That's right, it's all part of it.
Friday morning.
Oh, the next year is Friday morning, we're starting the period. There's no shit to walk to Tikkun Chometz. Straight after Shachris. We can't do it.
6:35 on Shabbos afternoon.
Is that what time it is? Was that after Mincha?
Between Mincha and Marib.
6:35.
6:35, I guess. You'll have nothing else to do. You'll have eaten 4 times already.
You'll
You'll be up since 6:30 in the morning.
You would have slept.
Hopefully, if the kids are blind.